1 year ago, I was a man who had never worn a dress in his life, and tonight I am standing in front of my bedroom mirror in a navy blue gown that I bought with my own money, for my own body, and the woman looking back at me feels more honest than anything I have ever seen in glass before. In 12 hours, I have to make a decision that will split my life into a before and an after, and I still don't know which side I'm going to choose. But before I tell you what I decided, you need to understand how a stupid promise, a rainy October evening, and one silk blouse turned into 12 months that dismantled everything I thought I knew about myself and rebuilt me into someone I never expected to meet. It started with my sister. Everyone's story like this probably starts with an accident, and mine is no different. My younger sister Alina runs a small online clothing boutique from her apartment, and last October, she had a problem. Her model for a winter catalog shoot canceled 2 days before the photographer was booked. The deposit was non-refundable, and she was sitting on my couch with her head in her hands, half laughing, half crying, saying she was going to lose 3 months of profit. I made a joke. I said, well, we're the same height, same shoulders, same stubborn jaw. Just put me in the clothes. She looked up at me slowly, and I watched the joke die in my own mouth, because her eyes had that look. The look little sisters get when they're about to talk you into something. She said, you know what, you're actually not wrong. And I said, no, I was kidding. And she said, the camera won't show your face much anyway. It's a catalog about coats and scarves. Just stand there. Just be a mannequin. One afternoon, she promised me lunch. She promised me silence. She promised that no one outside that studio would ever know. I want you to remember that word. Promised. That was the first turning point, and I didn't even feel it happen. It just felt like helping family. The day of the shoot, I stood in a dressing room that smelled like new fabric and steam, holding a blouse so soft it felt like water running through my fingers. Alina did my makeup herself, quick and professional, nothing dramatic, just enough to soften the lines of my face for the camera. She wrapped a scarf around my neck, stepped back, and went quiet. And when I turned to the mirror, I understood why. I didn't look like a man in a costume. I didn't look ridiculous. I looked like someone. A real someone, with a posture and a softness I didn't recognize, and the strangest part, the part that scared me then and still makes my chest tight now, was that I felt calm. Not excited, not ashamed. Calm. Like an engine that had been rattling my whole life had suddenly gone quiet. The photographer worked fast. Chin up, shoulders back, hands relaxed. I was a mannequin. I was good at it. And when it was over, I changed back into my jeans and hoodie in 90 seconds, washed my face, and told myself that was that. A weird afternoon. A good story to never tell anyone. 2 weeks later, Alina called me again. The catalog had done well. The photographer wanted to book the same model for the spring line, and he was offering double. I said no immediately. I said it before she'd even finished the sentence. And then she said the number, the actual money, and I'll be honest with you, I was drowning in rent and car repairs that month, and the number was exactly what I needed. So I told myself a lie that men like me are very good at telling. I said, this isn't about anything. This is a job. A weird, well-paying job. Models wear costumes all the time. This is no different. That was the second turning point. Because the moment you build a rational excuse for something your heart wants, you've already made the decision. You just haven't admitted it yet. The spring shoot was longer. 3 days. By the second day, the makeup artist knew my face better than I did. By the third day, I knew how to stand, how to hold my shoulders, how to let my hands fall soft at my sides without being told. And on the last evening, when everything was packed up, Alina tossed me a garment bag and said, this one's yours, the client gifted it. It doesn't fit anyone else here. Inside was a simple gray sweater dress. I took it home and hung it in my closet behind my winter coat, like hiding it from someone. From myself, I suppose. It hung there for 11 days. I know because I counted. Every night, I'd open that closet for some stupid reason, to get a jacket, to check the weather, and I'd see it. 11 days. And on the 12th night, a Friday, home alone, rain on the windows, I put it on. Just to see. Just to feel that quiet engine again, if I'm being completely honest. I stood in my hallway mirror in a gray sweater dress with my hair a mess and my face bare, and I didn't look like a model. I looked like a woman in her own home at the end of a long week. And I started to cry, and I couldn't have told you why, because I didn't have the words yet. I didn't know that grief and relief can feel exactly the same when they arrive together. That night, I made a rule, and rules became the architecture of my whole year. The rule was simple: this stays inside. Inside the apartment, inside my skin, nobody knows, nobody sees. This is mine. This is private. This is contained. If you are watching this and you have ever made a rule like that, you already know what I'm about to say next. Rules like that don't contain anything. They're just the dam you build right before the flood. By January, I had a small collection. A few dresses, 2 wigs I'd ordered in a plain box with a fake sender name, a pair of shoes I could actually walk in after a week of practicing up and down my hallway like a kid learning to ride a bike. I'd learned makeup from videos at 2 in the morning, wiped it all off before bed, learned it again the next night. My hands stopped shaking when I held the eyeliner. My reflection stopped looking like a stranger and started looking like a friend I was slowly getting to know. And then came the third turning point, the one that changed the size of my world. Alina had a gallery event for her boutique, a real public event, and her +1 canceled. She asked me to come. As her. Not as a joke, not as a stunt. She just said, "I've watched you become someone this year, and I'd rather walk in there with her than with anyone else." I said no for 6 days. On the 7th day, I said yes. Getting ready took 4 hours. I threw up twice. But somewhere in hour 3, something shifted. I stopped dressing up and started getting dressed. Do you understand the difference? One is a performance. The other is just a woman preparing for her evening. When we walked into that gallery, my heart was hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. And then the most terrifying, most wonderful thing in the world happened. Nothing. Nothing happened. A waiter handed me a glass and said, "Here you are, miss." An older woman complimented my earrings. Someone asked me about the clothes, and I said my sister designed them, and she said, "You must be so proud of her." And I said, "You have no idea." For 3 hours I moved through the world as her, and the world simply said, "Yes, of course, welcome." I cried in the car afterwards. Alina just held my hand and drove. That night I learned something I want you to hear clearly, because it took me 30 years to learn it. Fear is loudest in the mirror and quietest in the world. Everything I was afraid of lived inside my own head. The world was never the enemy. My imagination of the world was. Spring turned into summer, and the boundaries kept softening. At first, she only existed at night. Then on weekends. Then one morning in June, I was dressed, fully her, drinking coffee by the window, and the doorbell rang. A delivery. And instead of hiding, instead of that cold spike of panic, I opened the door. The courier barely looked at me. "Sign here, ma'am. Have a good day." I closed the door and stood there holding a box of printer paper, like it was a trophy.
Ma'am.
One word from a stranger who will never remember me, and it meant more than any compliment I'd ever received in my life, because it wasn't a compliment. It was just reality. That was the 4th turning point. The day the outside world said the word casually, carelessly, like it was nothing, and I realized it was everything. In July, I gave her a name. I'm not going to tell it to you here, because it's the one thing that still belongs only to me, and I hope you'll understand that. But I'll tell you what happened when I first wrote it down. I wrote it on a piece of paper, and it looked wrong, like it belonged to someone else, someone braver. So I wrote it again. And again. 100 times, like a kid learning their own signature. And by the 100th time, it had stopped looking like someone else's name. It had started looking like mine. Maybe that's all identity is. The thing you practice until it becomes true. August brought the 5th turning point, and it was the hardest one so far, because it involved my mother. She came to visit unannounced, as mothers do, and I had exactly 90 seconds between her knock and her key in the door. She has her own key, and I stood in the middle of my living room in a summer dress with nowhere to run. So I didn't run. I opened the door as her. My mother looked at me for a long, long moment. Her face did something complicated. And then she said the first thing she said, I will remember until I die. She said, "You have my mother's eyes." I never noticed before. She didn't hug me that day. She didn't reject me either. She came in, she asked careful questions in a careful voice. She drank tea, and before she left she said, I need time, but I don't need distance. There's a difference. Remember that there's a difference.
And I do. I did.
Some people in your life will need time, and you have to let them have it, as long as time doesn't become a door that's quietly closed forever. My mother's time took about 2 months. When she called me in October, she used the name. She'd found it from Alina, and she used it, and then she asked if I'd learned to cook anything decent yet, or if I was still living on noodles. That's how mothers say I love you when the big words are still too heavy. Now I need to tell you about the 6th turning point, because not all of them are warm. In late September, at a grocery store, a man from my old office recognized me. Not as her, as me. I saw the recognition land on his face like a stone dropping into water, saw the confusion, saw the smile start, that kind of smile. I abandoned my cart and I drove home, and I didn't come out as anyone, him or her, for 9 days. I want to be honest with you here because this channel is about honesty. There are nights in this life where you'll stand in front of your closet and want to throw everything into bags and drive it to a dumpster and never look back. I had those bags packed. They sat by my door for 2 days. And on the 3rd day, I unpacked them, one piece at a time, and I hung every single thing back up, slowly, deliberately, like a ceremony. Because I finally understood, running back into the closet wouldn't make me safer. It would just make me smaller. And I had spent 9 months growing. I was not going to shrink for a man who didn't matter. October was a full year since the first shoot, and Alina did something I didn't expect. She took me to the studio where it all started, just the 2 of us, and she recreated the first photo. Same pose. Same lighting. And then she put the 2 images side by side, the man in the coat from a year ago and the woman from today, and she said, "Look, same person." It was always the same person. The camera knew before you did. That was the 7th turning point, and it wasn't loud. It was the quietest moment of the whole year. Because I looked at those 2 faces, and I couldn't find a lie in either of them. He wasn't a costume I wore for 30 years, and she isn't a costume I wear now. They were both me, the whole time. I had just never been allowed to see the whole picture before. November tested me with ordinary life, and I mean truly ordinary. Flu season, a flat tire, tax paperwork. And here's what nobody tells you about living as her for months on end. Eventually it stops being an event and starts being a Tuesday. I changed that tire in a skirt, in the rain, cursing like a sailor, and a guy from the auto shop who came to help never blinked, just called me ma'am and showed me the right way to use the jack. There is a strange, profound lesson in the mundane. Anyone can be brave for a gallery opening. Being brave for a tire change on a wet highway, that's when you know it's real. That's when the performance ends and the life begins. And that brings us to December. This month. The decision standing between me and tomorrow morning. My company merged with another firm this year. All contracts are being re-signed in person tomorrow, and for the first time, I have to choose which name goes on the paper. Which person walks into that office. For 11 months, I lived a double life and told myself I was managing it fine, and the truth is I was, but management isn't living. It's maintenance. And I'm tired of maintaining. Tomorrow I walk in as myself. All of myself. Maybe that costs me the job. Maybe it costs me people I thought were friends. But tonight, standing here in this navy blue gown, I finally understand what these 12 months were actually teaching me. It was never about the clothes. The clothes were just the language. What they were saying was, you are allowed to exist whole. You are allowed to take up the full space of your own life. You don't have to amputate half of yourself to be loved. And anyone who requires that amputation was never loving you. They were loving the wound. So here's who I really was all along. Not him. Not her. The person who was brave enough to keep going on the 9th day, when the bags were packed by the door. That person.
That was always me.
If you're still here at the end of this story, then some part of it was yours too, and I want to hear it. Tell me in the comments which moment of this year you felt the most, and if you've ever stood in front of your own mirror waiting for the engine to go quiet, tell me that too. You're not alone in that hallway. Subscribe if you want to know what happened tomorrow morning, because that story is coming, and believe me, it has its own 12 turning points. Until then, be gentle with the person in your mirror. She's been waiting a long time to meet you.